Yeah, and we're live. Thank you very
Nice.
much. Hello and welcome to another episode of eAfterWork. Hi, Artem. Thank you very much for being with us today. I've seen that you've been in a lot of talks. So, how does it feel to be in another one?
Thanks for having me here. Yeah, a lot in the last year. This year, I tried to calm it a little bit down because we have a lot of engineering work. And if you're attending to a lot of talks, yeah, you need to. I mean, the work will wait for you. It's not like someone will do it for you. So this year, I try not to attending to many talks and doing like more remote formats like now after the work is done. So you can having like a nice chat, showing some stuff because it's easier to organize and it's a really nice format I like. So thanks for having me here.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, before diving into the details and getting to know you even more, thank you very much again for accepting this. Today is a special session for us because Artem came with two gifts for us. So we are gifting you, as we promised, two books that is written by Artem. So mine is not signed one, but the one that Artem has is signed one. There is a bit of caveat to it, though. I had to filter only the European-based people, so we are going to choose two people from the people that subscribe to the event. We have more than 100. I think it's 150 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, we are filtering down only the European based due to the postal thing that needs to be shipped to you. So before asking Artem to tell us more about himself, I'm gonna share my very creative screen.
Oh, yes, please.
This is
A
gonna use.
random raffle. I like it.
Do you use Cloud or do you use other models?
I lose everything depends on how the models at this moment work. Sometimes you are happier with this one and then they release a new one and you are not happy anymore. So I switch. So I guess I have all subscription.
Okay.
From
I
Cloud
mean,
to Gemini Pro to ChatGPT because it's like ChatGPT still historical one, the start one, and I'm still paying for it. But yeah, it depends on. But in the most cases, in the last part, I'm using a lot of Codex integration into the EDA. This is the
and
most.
do you have any harness preferences? Do you use Codex? Do you use Cloud CLI or do you use a GitHub Copilot?
It depends on the work. I mean, if I'm doing something like just auto completion, the smart way, I really like GitHub Copilot because it's really straightforward. It's not making too much, and you don't need to install a lot of plugins like in the past for Terraform completion or Kubernetes completion. And this is what I'm using GitHub Copilot. If I'm doing some creative work, I'm just going to really boring to the web. And then I'm using Perplexity or another tools to create some brainstorm, or if I need some creative work. And if I'm doing some code review or something like this, then I'm using this Codex integrations in most cases running and seeing if, I don't know, for example, if I change code, I'm not using too much AI, to be honest, because in the most cases, after I'm productive, it's cost me a lot of time to fix it. So I try to not to avoid it, but to do the work that's important by myself and just using AI to see if, for example, documentation, if I document it wrong, if I write a new function and so on. So I let then Codex check all these files and seeing if I forgot something. This is really I like. So I'm doing a combination of, so I'm not on the hype train because maybe I'm a really classic guy using AI, so not the one you want to talk
You're doing
about.
old school, right?
Yeah, a little bit old school, not how to manage a fleet of agents because I saw his builds and for me it was like, whoa.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions about this for you. So we choose the first winner, and then half hour in, we're gonna choose the other one. So let's do it.
Yes.
3, 2, 1, and pick a winner. Let's see.
But it looks really amazing. I should use more cloud.
Yeah.
It looks like using a lot of cloud, or no, I mean cloud for things like this.
Yeah, I use Cloud even for coding and DevOps. Okay, so we got a winner, Martin. I'm gonna get in touch with you in LinkedIn, and then we gotta get information and send them to Artem so that you can get your signed book about the GitOps.
Nice.
Perfect. Congratulations, Martin.
Congrats. I'm really happy for you, Martin.
Yeah. Okay. And remove. Yeah, and we're back. So yeah, can you give us a little bit about story or background about where
Who
you
am
come from?
I? Yeah, I don't like to
What?
speak too much about me, but I'm giving you a short introduction
Yeah.
about me or what I'm doing now. At the moment, my role is I'm Artem, of course, or obviously. I'm working as a head of platform engineering for ATS Consulting. It's a startup founded 2019 in Germany. But it's like, I mean, we are calling us our startups because we have this culture of startups and we are remote first. But looking at the numbers of the employees, we are around about 150 people, something right now. So it's not a startup anymore. Also, if you're looking on the revenue, we don't get the startup bonus. So yeah, but we still call it because we have this culture. And I have did a lot in the CNCF space, doing a lot of contribution. I'm not officially a CNCF ambassador, but I'm CNCF Kubestronaut because I enjoyed this program if it started at the beginning. Now they have this golden Kubestronaut. I'm not part of it. And I'm also doing a lot of ambassador works for platformengineering.org because a lot of people try to build a platform and I try to understand their pain, not just only what we are building. So understand where the market is, where we are, and try to help these people by using open source tools. So this is like a linked together. If you are building a platform, you have also a lot of touch with open source tools you need. So this is how I balance it. And like you already mentioned, I'm published with a colleague of mine, this book, Implementing GitOps with Kubernetes. And yeah, that is, I mean, like I say, I don't like to talk much about me in the most cases.
I'm gonna ask you questions and then you will tell us more
Yes,
about that.
please.
How do you manage all of that? How do you manage like being able to create a book, to attend conferences, to be an ambassador or semi-ambassador of CNCF, and then your should I qualify that as a consulting work? What you're doing, or is it more for
Yeah, it's
consulting?
consulting work.
Yeah.
It's what we're
And
doing
then
in the most cases.
I believe you're doing consulting. You're doing. You are a head of a platform engineer. So I believe you're doing also some managerial or management tasks. How do you balance all of that?
It's a great question. Sometimes it's just it's like a to-do list. You are doing it, you don't think about it, but at the end of the year, you are taking a recap and doing, holy moly, what's happening this year? Sometimes it's like this. Sometimes it's also overwhelming. A lot of people asking me, how do you manage it? I don't have a special recipe how to manage all the stuff. Sometimes I'm also overwhelmed and you need to balance it a little bit. But in the most cases, it looks from the outside maybe that I'm working parallel on 20 tasks, but it's not, because in the most cases I have one task, I'm focusing on it. For example, for 1 or 2 weeks, I'm finish it. I'm happy with the quality, and then I'm jumping to the another one. But if we're starting to publish it over the year, it looks like you're doing 20 things at once. The book was a challenging one because you need to, I think if I remember it right, I don't had 3 weekends for a half year, because at the end of the day, like you say, you have ambassador work, you have this consulting work and so on. So you have just the evening hours and you have the weekends. So this is where we spend the most of the time. And I would say, don't underestimate, even if you're using AI for some enhancement of some improvement parts, not the content. I would never recommend to produce this content by AI, but to enhance it, because we are all not native speaker or native writer, and it helps you to remove, we call it in Germany, Denglish. So if you combine, English words with this German things.
It's called English.
Yeah. And it helps you to remove these things. Yeah, I guess we have also a disclaimer. This book is not written by AI, but it's enhanced, or it can be used by some AI stuff. So yeah, and this is how we are doing at the end of the day, or how I try to balance all this task. And yeah, nothing special, I guess. Just normal work with a little bit organization and schedule. And yeah,
But this is like from a macro perspective. What about from the macro or micro perspective? How does that look like on a daily basis? Do you have like some hours where you lock in and you don't do anything else and you focus on one task, or do you multitask, or do you have like part of the day where you can answer your emails and another part where you zone out and you don't answer anything? How does it look like?
It's depends a little bit on the task. For example, at the moment we are planning to do load test. Load test, which cost you. I'm working with Stackit, and if you, for example, want to test a tool like Argo City and see how much can it manage a hub, a load test will cost you between 50,000 and 500,000. So it's really expensive. So for this part, I'm try for the preparing. We are just planning, try to focus on different tasks. So I'm the last week, for example, I ignored all the LinkedIn messages. Sorry for that, guys. I don't answer the most. I mean, of course, because we need to coordinate it, but the other, I ignore it because I was in a loop and focusing on nothing else, because it takes you a lot of time to prepare everything. After you bootstrap the infrastructure, you produce a lot of costs. So you need to doing a lot of preparation works. Or if I'm doing coding task or something like this, I'm just trying to focus on this day on this coding task and then going to the gym or doing something like this to a little bit refresh the mind. But if I'm doing some different stuff, I don't know, some promotions or some collaboration or some ambassador tasks, then of course sometimes I have like 2 hours blocks. I'm creating also sometimes blocker with myself for different tasks. So I have like deadlines and going to different topics. And sometimes I don't have a flow and I'm just try to work on different tasks, how they're coming in with some schedule. So it depends on the task itself and how much concentration and it's need. And also, if you're switching task, your cognitive load increase every time. For me, I need, for example, if I switch from task A to B, I need between 5 and 30 minutes to getting concentrated on this task. So if you have 8 tasks that need your concentration and you switch, so you can count the time or accumulate it, that you will be just needs a half day to getting concentrated. So it's
correct. I mean, like context switching may be a dangerous thing when you're doing things that need much more concentration and much more focus. Yeah, that's true. And I believe the Git operations or GitOps is one of those topics that if you want to do something in the infrastructure, one small mistake would cost you, as you mentioned, tons of money. And yeah, so how did you land on the GitOps space? And let's define the GitOps first. I mean, every time we're talking about you mentioned platform engineering, and before, I mean, one of the sessions that I hosted was with Sam. I saw that you also did a podcast with him from platform engineering, and we were talking about this difference between DevOps, platform engineering, SRE, and all those terms that may sometimes feel they talk about the same job or the same tasks. How do you define all of these? I mean, what's GitOps for you? You wrote a book about implementing GitOps with Kubernetes. What is GitOps in the first place?
GitOps, I would a little bit separate from DevOps, platform engineering, and another parts, because one is focusing on building something, and GitOps, it's like, I mean, it's an engine or allows you how you build things, and it's part of. Doesn't matter if it's the infinity loop, from DevOps, if you put it there, or if you're having now this planes based on platform engineering and you're putting it to the delivery part. So yeah, it's still for me like an agent, and how I define it. A little bit, maybe to giving a little bit more context on the history. If I'm starting to work in this world, or if I was like born in this cloud native world, because before that I did 1 year software engineering, and then I started directly with Kubernetes, so I don't know another stuff and cloud engineering. And in the past, it was for us, we have a lot of pipelines, and if we push to a cluster, for example, if we have a new version, of course, some integration tests are running, you have continuous integration and so on. And then we push to the cluster, and then we have a state which is mutable, because we also, if something goes wrong, our pipelines are slow. So we did a lot of changes ad hoc directly on prod. I know, not recommended, but you need to learn. This is how we all started to learn. So we fixed it directly. And our problem was like, okay, we fixed it now, because in the most cases, it's you have bad luck, it's on Friday, so you fix it and you forgot to put it into tickets or something else. So it will be addressed in the next release. So after you're doing 2 weeks later, next release, you can see, oh, it's breaking again because you just fixed it ad hoc. And this is not GitOps related, but this was this push-based approach, and where you have mutable state. And then we realized that we can use GitOps. It was, I don't know, something about 2019, 2020. I don't want to lie, something about it, but we realized, okay, we can put the CD part away to from push-based by running an agent on it and the agent deploy it. And how we are doing it, and this is now how I define GitOps, you declarative something, intent you want to have. And then you are saying, I'm just putting it to Git or another else, and the agent is becoming like a contract. And you say, this is my contract, this is my intent, and this is the agent. And you are not saying, what do you want? You're just saying, you are not saying how it should be achieved. You're just saying, for example, I want a deployment with 3 replica, and the agent fulfill it. Because a lot of people are confused. They say we had Chef and Puppet in the past. It was similar. It was also declarative, yes, but you define an order in the past. And now you're just saying, I have an intent, please fulfill it, and I put it in Git. And in the best cases, it's still version. This is what we like about GitOps, for example. It's still version and immutable. For example, if I'm putting a replica set of 3 and committed to Git, so my agent sees a new intent from my side and then will apply it and keep it in sync. And then if I'm creating a new change, replica 4, I will again declare my intent and the agent will fulfill it. And we communicate to this contract. So it's kind of immutable. You don't touch this infrastructure. And it's pull-based and it's more secure because you don't need having credentials for the pipeline to push it. It is just pull-based. And if you delete, or how we did it in the past, you will be punished. For example, ad hoc changes, it's not possible anymore because it will continuously reconcile with this feedback loop and will fix it. So this is how I define GitOps, but it's a technical view, I guess, more based on it, because you also, if you're working with GitOps, it's also a culture shift. This is also what we learned about this years. Working with GitOps is not just about the tooling, it's also how you implement it and explain it. I mean, you're asking what is GitOps for me? I give you a technical implementation or technical explanation. And if you're asking another people, they give you maybe another one. And for us, the learning was, what I wanted to pointing out is, if we started with the developer after we learned GitOps, we started to work with the developer and realized that they don't like it. They hate it at the beginning, GitOps, because in the past it was like they directly developed or over the pipeline and to the production cluster. So for them feels like, okay, I can making some changes. And now you can say, no, you can't. You need every time to going to Git or OCI or whatever and declare your intent at the beginning. A lot of the developer hated it because they needed to understand what this mean immutable. If you're making a change, if you declare this intent here, it will be detected. If you're making an error, you can going to an intent back or revert this commit, and then it will coming back. It was also not so easy to understand for them, to be honest. And this is also what surprised us, to establish this culture. And so they understand, okay, we never touch the cluster, and also they don't need access anymore, operation and admin access to this cluster. This is what I'm meaning by by culture shift. Because in the past, they also wanted to have every time the access and also having some operation access. Now you say GitOps in, GitOps out. Everything you defined, if it's implemented right, it will be automatically deployed. If you remove this intent, it will be then removed automatically if you're doing it the right way. And it's also a learning because they wanted to having access, and you say you need to see your platform or your cluster like a black box. You don't need to access this. Like you have a managed service on Azure or another cloud provider where it's a pass or something like this. You don't access it directly. You don't SSH to the service because it's fully managed, and you just configure it over an interface. What do you want, and so on and so on. This is what we also try to establish with GitOps. So it's a combination of tooling, but also of culture, and but based on these 4 core principles, which are named by Alexis, I guess 2016 or 17, something like this. He coined this GitOps name based on this 4 principle, where we try to live on it.
Yeah, so basically you're asking people to make this mindset shift to go from anything that is infrastructure as code in the classical way, where they have to create other commands to go into a mindset where everything is a PR. So you want to make a change, you need the PR so that this PR would live somewhere as a state, and we have something that is an agent that is going to try to read that state that resides in the repository somewhere and try to apply this so that you can get the physical state and then and the right state.
Yeah, this is the whole idea. Otherwise, you will not have a history. I mean, if you're doing some changes ad hoc or some changes over the pipeline, you will
trace it,
never
yeah.
have the whole history. And it's becoming very important for security audits. Another one where you need to provide every change. So it's just easy. You can export it if you're doing it the right way and not mismatch with the tags and override them and so on. But it's also becoming like you have a straight line of history, so you can also provide. But yeah, you explain it really, really well. It's like more PR based, or a lot of people don't like and saying everything, because GitOps is, this is what I try multiple times to mention here. It's not just only Git. Your manifest can also live in OCI, because a lot of people thinking GitOps is based on Git.
Repository, yeah.
Yeah, on repositories, and I try to avoid it a little bit. It was in the past because it was, I mean, a common thing, and a lot of people still using it. But for example, if you want to having a really immutable infrastructure, like immutable artifacts you create every time, Git is maybe not the best solution, because you can change it. For example, if I'm making a change which is pointing out to a specific tag, no one can, I can change the stack, or I can make another change, and I can just move the stack how I like it, because no one will try to block me on it. So it's not becoming really immutable anymore. And so a lot of people going now and using OCI, Open Container Initiative, as a protocol. And because then every time you create an artifact, it's becoming immutable. So if you need a change, it's creating every time a new artifact, and then it will be deployed. So this is a little bit the difference. They call it today, Science 2022, Gitless GitOps. So I try not to educate the people too much on this point of story, but Git is not that only the part of GitOps. You can also use another backends like OCI.
Well, perfect. What about, you mentioned the agent that is going to sync the manifest and make it on the target. So one thing that I want to make sure over here is the target is always Kubernetes. Is that right? So we are always talking about Kubernetes here?
In the most cases, yes, it is. I mean, because we are using, for the most of our platforms, we are building Kubernetes, of course, Linux, and then Kubernetes on top of it. And in the most cases, yeah, it's the target cluster. I mean, in my world and also in my daily work, it's Kubernetes. But of course, you can also use this agent, for example. I mean, this is just you need to think. I call it agent, not AI agent, but it's like you can also create infrastructure with it, and then having another target. And Kubernetes just becoming your API you're working with. For example, if you're using tools like Crossplane allows you to create infrastructure about the declarative way, and then you can say, I want to having a database, maybe over an abstraction layer, and it will use Crossplane behind the scenes and create a database for you, or VM, and then maybe deploy this workload to this VM. So the target cluster not need to be the most cases for your workload Kubernetes, but Kubernetes with GitOps becoming like your API for every works. And if you are also looking a look at this reference architecture from platform engineering on the CD part, you can also see, I guess they have Argo CD, but it can be Flux or Swelter's add-on controller as delivery plane. It's can becoming everything. So it's not related just only to Kubernetes. And the easy way to explain also an agent, I mean, you can also start a VM and also implement something like running in a loop, checking every time if someone has an intent, it should take the intent and then do something with it. So it's not just only Kubernetes related, but in the most cases, we understand Kubernetes because it's part of our daily work.
Yeah. And how do you see the adoption of the GitOps practices? I have read recently, I mean, looking at all the aspects of GitOps, I've seen that big corporations are not fan of the pull based or synchronizing based, because there is this agent that cannot take responsibility of what it is doing, and they prefer to have the I don't know if correct me if I'm wrong here, but the push base, meaning that the agent does not run. There is a human being that should click on the agent so that it can sync from the source and then push it to the target. Is that accurate, or how do you see that?
I mean, if I get the point right, it's true. I mean, for example, this is what I saw. If you're managing infrastructure through an agent, the agent is just, I mean, a set of controller and a set of loops. To oversimplify it a little bit, if I'm managing with this agent, for example, infrastructure in the cloud, the agent just try to apply it in loops. And if something goes wrong and the agent loses the state, or this tool loses the state, and something happening's wrong, the agent say, I don't see it, it will delete database, and it's happening. You can see some talks. I was attending to a talk last year at Cloud Native Summit, if I remember it right, and they gave a talk how an agent, GitOps-based approach with crossplane, deleted a lot of production databases because he lost his state. So yeah, it's can happening. And in some cases, you also want then have to have more control, like to push it. And you have also specific areas, like let's say we are speaking about, for example, on running on edge. Let's say you have something like grocery stores across Germany or across Europe. And the internet in Germany is not quite developed over the whole Germany. And now you're having this agent in an area, maybe running on limited resources. You don't want to having all this time pull based. You want to having like maybe a trigger or something like this. You want having more control because you are maybe also delivering once a week the software. So why do you want to having it every 3 minutes, this reconciliation loop? Because for the most tools, the default time is to reconcile for every application every 180 seconds. So why do you need it? And in the most cases, a lot of people implementing like for these use cases, like boundaries and saying, if I'm clicking as a human in the loop, or if I'm clicking now, it should deploy to this 20H location, I'm approve it. It triggers something like a webhook, and then they triggered the GitOps engine once, and then it will be synced over pull base, not push base. The people still don't like push base, because if you're having push base parts, in the most cases, you will need having credential to this cluster. If you're having pull base, you don't need having credentials, because you just need read only to Git or OCI or whatever you're using to pull it. So it's also a security matter. But yeah, I can understand it that the people, a lot of some companies, especially depends how you're using GitOps or how customized you have parts of it. So it can bring you some headache, and it's not all the people like it. But to be honest, the most companies I'm speaking with, and I don't know how many books I'm signed now, so it must be about 550. And I try to take the time for every person I met, and I try to understand where are they at the GitOps journey. They already implemented how many clusters they manage, and spent 1 or 2 minutes, because I'm really slow at book signings. So hopefully, so the people are happy that we are doing it remote. Otherwise, it will take a lot of time. And if you can see on the most companies, the most companies are using already GitOps, or are on the way to the GitOps, and some companies can't use it because they build, for example, I can't name the name, but it's one of the biggest companies for booking your flights, booking your hotels, and so on. And they explain me, for example, they say we have this really, really huge pipelines that using a lot of another pipelines, and it will take a lot of time to refactor it and to rebuild it. So at the moment, they don't try to use GitOps because they say it works, and it will take too much time. But the most companies are trying to adopt GitOps, because I don't see some disadvantages, to be honest. If you are doing GitOps the right way, you also don't need to take care of disaster recovery. If you, for example, don't have a state in your cluster. I also doing freelancing, and I had a customer 2-3 years ago, and we built this GitOps approach. I mean, we switched from CI/CD push-based to GitOps for the CD part. And then he was like, we need now disaster recovery. He coming with a strategy of 2 sides. And I was like, say, okay, let's see, what do you understand about disaster recovery? And then he we are going through all these points. Like I say, no database, no state in this cluster, stateless, so need to backup. And he realized, he said, oh, okay, we don't need this disaster recovery and backup plans more, because everything it's already declarative as an intent, also secrets by using a secret store, not plain secret and also not seal secret, but using external secrets operator, for example, it's tools, so having just a pointer to a real vault. And he realized we don't need a disaster recovery plan anymore. And then we did, they had an outage from a cluster, and they needed to spin up new one, and they say, okay, now we will test it, and we just moved this pointer from this one cluster to another one, just deploying a GitOps engine like Argo CD and pointing out to the same config state, and just removed this connection. And it was like in 20 or 30 minutes, the whole state, whole application recovered. So after we realized this, and I was, at the time I was not working for IITS, I was working for Hamburg Port Authority. Our approach was also with GitOps, what we can achieve if we need more than 1 hour to troubleshoot a Kubernetes cluster because we have some issues, we just destroy it, deploy a new one, and in 20 or 30 minutes, it will deploy not just only our stack, it will also deploy the application from the developer. And we realized, really, we had a counter and it was like 1 hour troubleshooting. Okay, now we are going to this plan B, and it works much better because we used a Kubernetes solution, which was at the beginning not so mature like it's now. It's involved a little bit, so we needed to making some plans. It was also a managed Kubernetes solution, not hosted by us, but also we buy it. But yeah, so you can see a lot of GitOps advantages at this point.
So basically what you're saying is, as long as you separate the data plane, that you still have to set some kind of a disaster recovery from it for it. I mean, the data is you should have it somewhere that is like replicated and stuff. The plane of the application plane can be replicated within a second, so you don't need to have a complete duplicated application layer that would cost you double the price. You can just create one and spin up the other one in case you need it, right?
Yeah,
So
you're right. You don't need to having like 2 cluster like AB or passive active or something like this. You can just you can just switch it. I mean, of course, it depends on, are you able, I mean, what are the SLAs, the service you're providing to the customers? If you have some SLAs and you need to fulfill them, of course, then you need to think different. But if you don't have something like this or can allow downtime, you don't need it. And with data plane, what we are meaning by that, for example, you can manage database in Kubernetes. Or if you have, for example, some logs, you have some release state, or at the end of the day, they're creating a disk. And if you have something like this, it's becoming a little bit difficult. Then you need to rely on tools like Velero to backup it. But if you don't have things in your cluster because you're using managed database from the cloud, or you're using, for example, S3 bucket to save you logs, and you don't have data or state in your cluster, so then becoming really, really easy. But otherwise, it's becoming a little bit more effort to do it, because it's not just only, backup and then recovery some data. You need also to understand if the application still work with this new data, and you don't have a corrupted version of it, but it's then more on the logic implementation of the application, how it handles the data, and so on and so on. Then it's becoming a little bit more challenging, but also achievable. It's not related to GitOps from my point of view. It's more related how you're doing backups and recovery, and also how you write your application. So it can also work with multiple versions of data with different schemas, and so on and so on.
Wow, makes sense. And in terms of like knowledge, for someone who is interested, I'm talking about individual contributors here. Do you think that the learning curve to go from the I want your opinion actually here, going from infrastructure as code to GitOps, is this a correct thing to say to start with, to begin with? And if yes, is the learning curve steep, or is it? Is it something that we can learn within a couple of days or weeks? Or
I mean, you can see that I'm working in consultancy because you will getting again a depends answer.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
it's for example, if you're working with Azure
Yeah.
or with GCP or another hyperscaler from the US, so you can fully going to, I mean, you will also manage infrastructure, but not what we are meaning here, I guess, with infrastructure as code using Terraform, for example, or
Yeah.
Pulumi or something like this, and push about it. Because at the end of the day, if you are using then Azure or GCP, you can do it with Crossplane or Crow Kubernetes Resource Orchestrator. You're also doing infrastructure as code, but you're doing it this declarative way. Then you need to learn Kubernetes and understand how Kubernetes work, what are custom resource definition. Then you don't need this infrastructure as code. But if you are working with European cloud provider, which doesn't have these tools or this provider for these tools, so you can manage infrastructure about it. So you rely on Terraform or other tools because this is the common language we have or this is the most established tools, I guess, on the market, Terraform or Terraform provider. So of course you can just jump from it to another one because you need to provision databases. You need to provision this Kubernetes itself. I mean, how do you want to deploy the GitOps engine if you don't have Kubernetes? So it's a little bit relying on where you're starting. If you're directly starting with Azure, AWS, or GCP, you can do it directly. But it makes sense, I guess, to learn both worlds because at the end of the day, you never know where your projects are landing or what you will be do. And it doesn't hurt to understand also how infrastructure as code works, how the state is managed, and so on and so on. So you're getting also the advantages or disadvantages of GitOps tools. I can recommend to go both ways if the time allows you, because it's like you are learning the basic, you know. You need to learn Linux, you need to learn Git, you need to learn cloud, and you need to learn if you're learning cloud engineering or how you are working with managed services. It's also Terraform is part of it or infrastructure as code. Doesn't matter if you're using a CDK, Cloud Development Kit, or Pulumi, or whatever you're using to infrastructure, or if you're using maybe a library direct in Python, and then to the GitOps Kubernetes base. So I mean, even with VI, you need to go through these basics, and it's painful. It takes you a lot of time. So I was really, really happy that I was going with the development. So it's like GitOps was not there if I'm starting. So it's coming there. So it's very difficult to answer because I needed to learn first the one world, and then I can also combine it with the new one. But I can highly recommend to learn infrastructure as code and also combine it with GitOps and Kubernetes also stuff, because this is how the most project looks like.
So if I understood correctly, you mentioned that if working with the hyperscalers, it's not worth it to go with the GitOps approach because you have their operator that already does most of the work. Is that correct?
Yes, for example, if you are taking Azure having this Azure Service Operator, ASO, for example. AWS have this egg controller, AWS controller for Kubernetes, if I guess it's right. GCP have something, KCC as a connector. And then you have tools like Crow or Crossplane or another one, which can, for example, Crow can leverage this parts of it and creating infrastructure. If you're going to European cloud provider, you need to write a provider for Crossplane, or you need to provide a provider for tools like existing already on the most American hyperscaler. So yeah, you need to do it by your own to speak with the API. At the end of the day, you're speaking not related to Terraform or another one. You need a resource, you have an API, and you need to say, hey, I want a managed database, and you need to find a way how you can leverage it. And for the most, I mean, I'm aware of that for Azure and GCP and AWS, they exist already. So you can just use it for the most managed services. For another one, you need to implement it. And we are a little bit slower compare in Europe compared to the American hyperscaler, because I mean, they started, I don't know, AWS started 2002, something like this. Azure is also now about 20 years in the game, around about 20 years. And if you're looking on the most European hyperscaler, I mean, if you're speaking about hyperscaler, if I get the definition right, if you are managing more than 500 racks, you are a hyperscaler, something like this. So,
Oh,
yeah, I don't know
do
if
not
it's
know about the
right. I
information.
saw
So
some definition of it. So
the
if we are
threshold is that
going,
is if 500 racks, is that?
yeah, this was, I don't know if it's true, but it was like I saw it and it looks like it makes sense between on the racks. And so in the most cases, I'm speaking about the European, I'm speaking about the public cloud provider to make it a bit of a difference. But at the end of the day, a lot of people say, yeah, we also hyperscaler. And for example, like I mentioned, I'm also working now with Stackit on this load test, and we also open source Kubera. It's coming from Stackit. It was internally developed. It's also GitOps-based framework, and we open source it. So I'm working a lot with the infrastructure. And if I remember it right, Stackit starts something like about 2020, 2019, and they're having really crazy speed, whereas they've already, and a lot of managed services and covering a lot of the stuff. But if I compare it, for example, to OTC, Open Telecom Cloud, now they renamed TCP, Telecom Cloud Public. I was a student, and they are announced at the CeBIT. It's a conference in Cologne, or it was a conference. It doesn't exist anymore. 2016, if I remember it right. They announced it already, so you can see this years the American hyperscaler had in advance. And I mean, if I started with Azure, we have a lot of problems also with this managed Kubernetes solution. I mean, on the one side, based on Kubernetes version, because it was an older one compared to the newest one, and they fixed it. And I also having a lot of time with the service and a lot of issue tickets at the beginning, but this is normal. You need to learn it, you provide something, and this is what I mean. The cloud provider had this advantage that they started really, really early. And so a lot of tools exist in the most cases for this three big player. I don't know how it's about Alibaba Cloud. They're also huge, but I never used it. And then if a lot of companies using these clouds, so it's making sense if you're providing a tool or something like this to build it first for that, because you have a greater, bigger community and also consumer base. So this is how you can see also the most tools are involving. First will be created. Maybe it's changing now, but in the past it was like first they are created for this tree hyperscaler, and then someone forked it or creating a version for European one. I wish it will be a little bit different, but this is the reality how it is also with OVH. I mean, they, for example, they just this year or end of the last year.
I'm just gonna cut you there before we go deep into the cloud providers in Europe. I want to choose the second.
Please go for it.
We've been talking for 40 minutes. Let's do it. So we're gonna choose the second winner, the second luckiest person. Let's see, and here we go. There is a lot of pairs here, which is normal.
But yeah, a lot of topic to discuss.
Yeah,
we don't have an agenda or schedule, so yeah, we are going with the flow.
Yeah. So we have Anwar. Congratulations, Anwar. I actually know the guy, so I'm gonna get in touch with them. Yeah, perfect. I'm gonna let me open the link here. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it here and I'm gonna get in touch with you. Congratulations again, and let's get back to the topic. Yeah, so we've been talking about the cloud providers in Europe. And the first argument that I hear when we compare the European and the American, let's call them hyperscalers because they are, is the price tag. AWS, Azure, or GCP are very expensive, right? Compared to is that correct in terms of like
I mean, it depends on the services you're using, but in the most cases, they are not much more expensive, but they cost you more compared to the European one. But the difference is, I mean, we have now a really difficult political situation and a lot of things happening. So the price is going up like hell everywhere. So they are still a little bit more expensive, what I'm seeing, but we also need, because electricity in Europe becoming much more expensive, as it was 2 or 3 years ago. So I guess a lot of this cloud provider also increasing the prices, you can see. So you can see it's still, I mean, the European still a little bit cheaper, but I guess it's not like you will say it's 40% or something like this. I would say from my experience, it's maybe between 5 and 20%, depends on the service you're using. The advantage I see from the European cloud provider, what you don't have on the most US, they are not charging you, for example, for egress and ingress for the traffic. And if you have a lot of communication, if you have, for example, ability zones on something like this, and you communicate a lot, you can see, for example, if you're taking some customers, I was worked 2 or 3 years ago, sometimes just paying about 5 and 10K for this traffic, and you don't have it. If you put this piece to this pricing model, yeah, then the European are coming to maybe 20% or 30%, something like this. If you just compare Kubernetes versus Kubernetes, it's becoming maybe 5 between 10%, but maybe I'm wrong. People need to double check it, but I don't see so much.
Yeah, in the core services, it's comparable, but in data transfer, they charge more. Why do they charge for data transfer and the European hyperscalers don't charge for it? Do you have an idea of that?
I don't have. I can imagine that it's. I mean, cost you a lot of. I can imagine if you're starting early. I maybe also they don't charge it at the beginning. Then they realized how much traffic, how expensive is traffic for you as a cloud provider, and starting to charge it. And the European cloud provider starting a little bit later. And you need to having some USPs, and you need to having also some advantages. I mean, if you're having just, let's say, 5% between Kubernetes and Kubernetes, so why I should switch? We are not speaking here about this compliance, governance, and everything we have in Europe, like NIS2, DORA.
Topic,
Yeah. If you put it away and you're just focusing on this compute power at the end of the day, what you're using. If you're using Kubernetes, a little bit more, but at the end of the day is compute power what you're using, a little bit storage and network. And if you're just having 5% and you calculated this cost to migrate from one cloud provider to another one, you will, I mean, until you're getting this 5% on profit, it will take you maybe 10 years. Compared to the engineering hours. So I guess a lot of European cloud provider will not charge it at the moment, so the people can switch, and it makes sense for them to switch. Like I say, if it's not depending on some compliance or some political or some another stuff. So yeah, but I think maybe it will also change in the future. I don't know. You can never predict. But to be honest, I don't know why it's which costs are created for the cloud provider by using a massive throughput, especially if you have different data center or one region with different availability zones. I'm not working with Azure anymore so much, but in the past it was also if you're having different subscription and you have traffic between different subscription, it was also charged even in the same availability zone. So I think they have their reasons for that, but I never did a deeper research on it, because it was like for the most customer I was work, it was like, okay, we don't care too much about it because it's not so much. So yeah, focusing on another stuff, like, I don't know, increasing our business or making more bulletproof or something like this.
Yeah. And do you see any tendencies, like, for given the political and everything that's going on? Do you see tendencies of the European to go in from the hyperscalers, the American ones, to the European? Do they have reason to do so? Do you see people going, or do you see the other ways, or the other side, or like going from small hyperscalers to the bigger ones? Do you see migration in one direction or the other?
In the one direction. I mean, it's now because of, I guess, of the regulation and a lot of acts we have in Europe. So we're doing a lot of migrations work. So, for example, if I'm speaking just for the point from IITS and the customer we migrate over the last 2 years and are migrating now, our pipeline is full because the people are going away from a US-based hyperscaler and they needed to go to European one. And you have different reasons for that. One reason is, for example, a lot of companies in Germany which are part of the critical infrastructure. For example, if you are a manufacturer or if you provide some transport, public transport, or some airplanes, electricity, and so on. I mean, everything in country need to function or to work, and they are now becoming regulated under NIS 2. And it's depending, for example, for them, they need to fulfill a lot of stuff. And also, for example, the health sector, if I remember it right, science last year, the health sector in Germany needed that the cloud provider have this BSE C5 Type 2 certification. And a lot of them doesn't had it in the past. I guess AWS becoming it and so on. But in the most cases, it's becoming a political thing, and the loss of people, a lot of companies or a lot of middle-sized companies, in the most cases also a lot of public sector and another one, are moving away some parts of the critical data back to Europe. This is what I'm seeing based on our project, how the pipeline works, and also based on this conversation we have on different conferences. So yeah, we can see going away from the big one to smaller one, but not with all the business. For example, if you're running your business on Azure, and if you are consuming and you have a revenue consumption of 1 million or 2 million, for example, per month or higher, so they're using a lot of managed services you can find for a cloud provider. Like, I don't know, if you're working in electricity, you're using a lot of data warehouses and a lot of, where you need to clean up your data, then to work with them, then creating in a Power BI dashboard to predict some stuff, and so on and so on. This is what I guess I don't see much provided by the European cloud provider, and that you have this data warehouse, lakehouse, and however they call it. And then, of course, you can't just move from the cloud provider. So they just try to put then the databases and another stuff they needed, so part-wise. So it's, again, depends answer on the size, on the consumption, what the people can run it, not. But at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of movement away from the big cloud provider. I mean, the German one, they are not small one, or the European one. I mean, OVH is also huge.
Yeah.
TCP, Telecom Cloud Public, in the past TCP or previously called.
What is the biggest one? What is the biggest one in Europe? Is it OVH or?
I don't know, honestly. If I would say from my point, I think it's TCP and OVH. This is the biggest one. Then I think, because at the moment also Stackit building like one region after another one, so they also have a really crazy speed, and it's also a lot of money behind and a lot of great engineers. So they're also starting to build, but I don't know if on the square feet, at the end of the day, I think you would measure it at square feet. But I think the biggest one I'm aware of Stackit, OVH, TCP, and we have smaller one like Exoscale from Switzerland, and another one also Scalaway is coming also from France. I don't know how big they are, but I would say OVH, TCP, and Stackit are the biggest one, but maybe I'm wrong. And we have also Hetzner. By Hetzner, it's much smaller and focusing on other stuff, but I would say these three are the biggest player. If I'm also compare it, for example, if you take a look at the Neo-Nephos, Linux Foundation created this Neo-Nephos Foundation for Europe. And if you are taking a look on the big player who are there, you can also see that the biggest cloud provider involved there are coming from Telecom, coming from Stackit or from the Schwarz Digit group, because Stackit is the product. So you have Schwarz Digit is behind it. This is and also OVH, I don't know if they are not part of it, but I guess it will be this tree. But of course, we need to double check it. It's a really, really nice question, but this is just from my feeling.
Yeah, I mean, they're they're starting to move. And I think I've seen that there is like a recent grant that was given by the European Union for the cloud providers. I think that would help them to scale up very quickly and build more. And I think everything goes within the sovereignty envelope of
Yeah, a lot of traffic coming now, going through this digital sovereignty now, and also digital resilience to understand your chain, to understand your tools. So open source becoming a really huge topic. It was a huge topic, but it's becoming now much huger, because if you want to build digital resiliency, you need to build it on top of open source, because then you know your chain, you know all these tools, the licensing, and so on and so on. It's also becoming a huge topic. But yeah, to check the numbers will be really, really nice. But
yeah. So we spoke about a lot of things, but we did not speak about the most cliche topic, which is AI. So in all of this, how do you use AI in DevOps? And I want your opinion about that, because you, before jumping into the call, we mentioned that you use AI basically as a proof reader, rather than someone or something that you would delegate your tasks for, as GitOps or as DevOps, or any operation that involves platform and infrastructure. Do you think that it's risky to delegate to the AI the platform stuff?
yes, I mean, focusing on the platform stuff and on the AI also in this GitOps area, if you're doing infrastructure, I mean, if I'm now as a platform engineer vibe code an application and don't understand and have a lot of issues, but the platform someone has built is bulletproof or had a lot of security standards, and I try to deploy this AI vibe coded, whatever you want to call it, to this platform, it will block it. But now if you are having, for example, the opposites, and you are now as a developer, for example, doing the same things like doing with vibe coding, they're doing vibe opsing, let's call it. It's becoming very dangerous, because we can see a lot of, depending also on the framework you're using, a lot of security issues. And if your platform becoming having a lot of security issues, so it doesn't matter what you deploy on top of it, because you have already a lot of problem there. So I think to create infrastructure with AI, it's becoming more critical as an application, because I mean, if you, for example, if you build a house, you also want to build a house on a solid ground.
Foundation, yeah.
Yeah, on a foundation, on a solid foundation. So this is similar happening if you want to deploy an application, you want to having a solid foundation. Otherwise, it will becoming challenging for you, and you will getting a lot of problems. So I see, yeah, this is that using AI for creating infrastructure is more critical. And I don't know all these reasons. The only thing I can share with you from my experience, why it's very difficult to use AI for GitOps compared for observability. It's much easier, because if you have observability and you have an issue, you have metrics, you have logs, you have traces, and maybe if you're lucky, you can also put to your agents some context to getting this. I don't know, you have a business application, it's crashing, and you can see, oh, last week they deployed a new database schema. And you can see, because not of this database schema, but you can see the metrics are going high, the logs are maybe not useful, then you can see on the traces it's becoming slower, and then you can relate it to this change. But with GitOps, we have this problem we're also trying to solving now. We try, if you to provide infrastructure based on Kubernetes or some tools, you're getting a Helm chart. Helm charts is a package manager. In the most cases, all third-party tools you need it for security, another one, are provided as Helm charts. So what we are doing is we are taking this Helm chart and we are putting layers on it. So we pre-configure it, like you install a package on Linux with some configuration, but we're also putting some other stuff on it. And so we have this provider chart, then we're having, it's called umbrella chart, putting on top of it, and then we are putting maybe another stuff on it. And you're having a lot of layer, and AI needs plain data. coming back to this example of observability, if AI getting plain data, you can ask it and you're getting a really nice answer compared to this a lot of complexity. And AI doesn't see what it's getting at the end of the day, this generated or this configuration as data, it's also called, this plain data. So it's giving you answers depending on Helm, but not depending on the infrastructure. And because we try to make it easy, I mean, why we built it? Because it's called don't repeat yourself. So it's making it very easy just to putting 2-3 values, getting a new environment and getting it. But the disadvantage is that AI can't read it. It needs plain data. And if you're now building with these things you build that allows you to scale like hell and to break cloud infrastructure and APIs, using AI, it will not provide you a really real answer. So you need to hydrate this data to provide it. And then maybe it will create better platforms or better infrastructure based on this real data. Otherwise, it's just giving you really, really confusing answers and also package manager related configuration, but not related to the application you're putting in this package.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, what you have mentioned basically is how you can leverage AI ops to answer questions about your platform. But for the implementation, you should always be careful. You should always rely on doing it in the most engineering, boring way, which is controlling everything and making sure that you're checking all the boxes, etc. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, in the past, last sentence, I mean, in the past, after we starting to build this platform, internal developer platform, we say a lot of, guys, you need to create golden paths, no boundaries. Now AI is becoming citizen of our platform. And if you're looking to the talks from the last year or this year, a lot of people saying, no, we need boundaries because it's dangerous running agents on it. So we need to catch them. So yeah, you can see also on the development that boundaries becoming a real topic with AI as a new developer at our platforms as a user.
So the keyword is guardrails. You need guardrails everywhere since you're now having an agent or a citizen that may be dangerous for you. Artem, we've been speaking for more than 1 hour. We learned a lot. I mean, thank you very much for the value you shared with us. It's very much appreciated. And I'm also like, they say 40 pages in. I still not finished the book, so I'll try to finish it. But it's a very interesting book, and I recommend it to everyone. Do you have any words for us? Any wisdom? Any advice for us as a closing words?
Not really. Just, I mean, I can say stay curious. Try to, if you're using AI, this is what I'm doing for try to do it the AI way and try to do it the hard way to understand if you're having you hard skills, if they still there or if you are not have them. So yeah, I guess in few years it will be coming really rare and also will separate you on the market for the future jobs. If AI don't take it over for everything, I think it will make a difference if you know how to code and how to write infrastructure as code or other stuff.
Yeah, if stay low level, understand everything before you go to the abstraction layer. Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for everyone who's watching and who is going to rewatch the rediffusion or the replay later. And yeah, see you in the next episode.
Thanks a lot.